we're thrilled to have been able to pull it together for you. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce this morning's keynote speaker. I had the delight of meeting Cindy Coney a couple years ago when we were both on a panel together at the American College of Rheumatology, where they had done a workshop to help healthcare professionals learn more about what patient organizations can do. And it's been a pleasure to sort of pull her into the scleroderma family. As a person living with lupus, Cindy is on the board of the Lupus Foundation of America. She's their chapter development chair, and in fact, left their meeting early so she could be here for ours because we asked first. Cindy is a dynamic and humorous speaker. She presented a workshop at last year's conference that she's doing again over the weekend called Maximizing Life and Minimizing Stress. An overwhelming number of conference evaluations not only raved about her workshop, but told us that she was the person we needed to have as our keynote speaker this year. And her opening address will be, "Things will be okay." Cindy? Let's get you.
We'll find the presentation and we'll be good.
No.
That's it.
Nope. Nope. Wrong one.
I don't know anything about that. Hang on.
Things will be okay. There you go.
We're good to go. We're good to go. Wow. Can you hear me? Is this on? It is on. It says it's on, but I'm not sure it is on. Well, see, I would use this one, but I don't want to stand up here all the time. So if some AV person can get this one a little louder for me, that would be really lovely. Because I have to be honest and tell you that, and people laugh and they say, and I know Roger that I was talking to from scleroderma this morning goes, "Good luck, Cindy. I know you're, do okay." And then he laughed. He goes, "I'm just teasing. I know you do this all the time." And I said, well, the truth is, I don't do it all the time. I am not a person who travels around the country, gets big bucks, zips into the city, and gives their canned talk and moves on to the next city. That's not who I am. That's not what I'm about. And as a matter of fact, I find keynotes really a little intimidating and don't like them typically nearly as well as workshops because there's a podium between us. And because my belief is that the real wisdom lies in each of you. It's not about what I know. It's about what you know inside. Am I getting that now? Test. 1, 2, 3. I'm mobile. I'm happy. I have a clicker down here, and I know you can see me. The first question, I used to work with children, and the first question I was always asked as I walked into the classroom and all the kids were sitting with their legs folded, and I always said, "Do you have any question?" The first question they always ask is, "How tall are you?" So I'm 5'10", so we can get that out of the way very quickly. And I wore heels so I can see all of you. So today I'm well over 6 feet. And I have to say that when I was getting ready to start this morning, someone came up to me, and we had done a conference call last year, a teleseminar. I'd put one on, and I just invited everyone to join for free, just to come on and let's talk about how people love us and the blessings in our lives around the time of Thanksgiving. And I had not met some of the participants face to face, and one of them walked up to me this morning, and it's kind of funny what she said. She said, "Cindy, my husband came into your workshop last year, and he was a little worried." And I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He said he didn't do perky first thing in the morning. So I can't help it. Just bear with Perky. I have some content too. And then when I walked up to the name tag thing this morning, Bruce, wherever you are, goes, give her the one that says easily, excites easily. So I have on my name tag, excites easily. Not quite sure what I'm going to tell my husband when I get home to Tampa about that. And then I picked up one for myself, and it says, plays well with others. And I thought, excites easily, plays well with others. Probably not a good idea. So plays well with others is still in my purse for next year. But as I got started today, I have had the great pleasure and honor of getting to meet many of you in this room. I didn't realize there were so many first-time attendees. That's really wonderful. But I've met Franny and Nancy and all of the people that are just so wonderful. And so as I was putting together my keynote, I thought, what do I really want to talk about? And I was here last year, and I was in Baltimore, and I was at ACR, and I thought, well, let me think about it. And it kind of reminded me of a story about my youngest daughter. I have two daughters now, 22 and 25. And I thought about little Julianne when she started kindergarten. And being an educator, I was your typical kindergarten parent. This was my baby going to school. And we went to the school, and we met the teacher, and we found her cubby, and we found the classroom. And on the first day of school, I walked her to the classroom, gave her a big hug. She's running off. I'm standing there with tears in my eyes. And she goes to school. She comes home, and I said, Jules, how was school? She goes, it was great, Mom. I loved it. Well, good, okay. So that night she goes to bed. The next morning I walk in and I walk up to her and I say, Jules, wake up, sweetheart. It's time for school. And she rolls over with this sleepy little face and she goes, what, again? So as I was thinking about coming today, I was thinking about all the people here who had already heard me speak and was hoping you were not thinking, what again? So I really thought about what I wanted to share today. And I came up with something a little different than I've shared in the past. As I said, I'm not the keynote speaker who drags the same speech all over the country. It's not who I am. Put it together for you. That's not my next slide. Well, let's see. Okay, let's talk about transitions. How's that? How's that for flexibility? Okay, we'll talk about transitions, and that's what I really want to talk about today. Because as each one of us are diagnosed with a life-challenging illness, it becomes a transition in our life. And I think about change as something that's an external event. We can move the sofa. That's change. We can get up and go do something different for a day. That's change. But what we're talking about as people who are affected by life-challenging illness is a transition. And that is an internal state. We go through it as we change our lives. I have a very dear friend who is 60 years old and recently lost her husband to lung cancer. And Mary Beth and I were having lunch one day, and I said to her, Mary Beth, how are you doing? How are you really doing? And she said, well, Cindy, it's hard. And she goes, you know what I'm trying so hard to find, and what I'm really looking for is how to create my new normal without Dick. And she said, and the thing is, I want to do it intentionally. I want to do it in a way that matters. It's very easy to get swept along and let life make all the transitions for us and all of the changes for us. And she said, I want to do it in a way that really matters. And my background, what I'm doing now isn't my background. It is kind of. But what I did for 26 years is I ran a nonprofit foundation in Tampa. And we developed and trained in prevention education. And we taught life skills to kids all over the country. And I started thinking about it, and it was really, how do we build resiliency? Because kids who are resilient are less likely to use drugs. When I thought about it, I thought, well, you know what? The same thing holds true for us. Adults that are resilient will have a much easier time transitioning through life's changes. And as we look at a transition always has an ending. It's kind of funny that we start something new with an ending. But the first step is letting go of things the way they used to be. And then we move in to a period of transition, and it's different for every single person. Some people transition very quickly, and sometimes it takes years and years and years, and there's nothing wrong with that. And for those of you that are here as spouses and friends, your life goes through those same transitions as people you love are diagnosed with illnesses. So we kind of sit in this neutral zone before we're able to find our new normal. And it's so wonderful. I can tell you that every time I've come to scleroderma, to any time I've worked with y'all, I always find such hope, such love, and such a wonderful, wonderful, caring spirit in your organization. So you have some leaders who have moved to that new normal in some very, very wonderful ways. So you can see, while we're in the gap, some of you in here, how many of you have been diagnosed for less than, let's say, 3 years? Relatively new diagnosis. Okay, so you may still be looking at life the way it was prior. How many of you have been diagnosed for, let's say, up to 10 or 15 years? Okay, so there are a number of you here. And how many of you for over 15 years? Okay, so it's Sharon, right? Yes, I was speaking to Sharon this morning at breakfast. So once you've been diagnosed for that long, traditionally you've established a new life that incorporates scleroderma. And what I want to talk about are the personal strengths that we can strengthen to move through that transition more easily and create the life that we want to live. Because my belief is that just because we've been diagnosed with a chronic illness does not mean that there cannot be happiness and joy in our lives. And so what I challenge everyone to do is to find out, how do you create that happiness and joy in your life, in your new normal after diagnosis? And you can see when we talk about personal strengths, there are 4 categories for resiliency. And we as children and adults are able to build these strengths. The stronger these strengths are, the easier it will be for us to move through transition. Well, when I looked at the list, And you can see responsiveness, communication, empathy, caring, compassion, forgiveness, altruism under the social area. In problem solving, planning, flexibility, resourcefulness, critical thinking, and insight. Autonomy. We have to have a positive identity. We have to believe, and I'm not talking about just say the words. I'm talking about truly believe that our lives have meaning even though we've received the diagnosis. There must be something in your life that gives your life meaning and purpose, a reason for you to get out of bed in the morning. We must be mindful, have self-awareness, humor, initiative, and for purpose, a goal or a direction. The new normal may hold different goals. The goals that you set before diagnosis may be different than the goals you set after diagnosis. That's okay. That's part of learning about our new normal. We need special interest, creativity, optimism, hope, faith, and a sense of meaning. Well, I looked at this whole list and I said, okay, Cindy, you only have an hour, so you cannot possibly talk about everything on the list. So I chose, oh, my clicker's, oh, there we go. I chose caring, humor, optimism, and hope. The truth is, I also chose creativity, but I was afraid I'd run out of time. So maybe next year I can come back and do a workshop on creativity, because I believe that keeps our spirit alive as well. So maybe we can do that next year. But I thought that these three, number one, you have probably gathered from the short time that we've been together that I'm pretty right brain, not left brain. So planning, organization, those are not necessarily my strengths. So I thought, I'm certainly not going to focus on something that I'm not very good at myself, although they say that we teach what we most need to learn. So maybe these are the things I need to learn, who knows? So let's talk about hope and optimism. Let's talk about those two first. And you'll notice that I grouped two of them together. I called them two, and I put two on one slide and two on the other slide. In my mind, that's still two topics, but it's really four for those of you that are a little left brain. Hope and optimism. I have a quote that I kind of carry around in my head, and it says, hope is faith holding out its hand in the dark. Hope is faith holding out its hand in the dark. And there are days when I am sure that every single person in this room has reached for that hand in the dark. Every single person in this room. Because there are days when we don't feel hope. But to give up on that can be devastating. So it's up to us to find that hope. Even if the door is a slight bit open and there's a tiny bit of light coming in, we need to hold on to that bit of light. I want to give you an example of hope. As you heard, I do have lupus, and I'll talk to you about it a little bit more in just a couple minutes. But one of the things that was affected by my lupus was my eyes. And they had told I had scleritis, and they were very worried that I may lose my eyesight. So I spent a lot of time at the eye doctor. One day I'd seen the eye doctor, and I had my eyes dilated. And you know what it's like to have your eyes dilated. I don't know why they don't do the scheduling and payment first when you can see the calendar and the checkbook, but they don't. So I'm kind of bumbling my way out to the counter to check out after I've seen the eye doctor. And I stand there, and there's a Formica counter. in front, and behind it, down a little lower, there's the receptionist. So I'm kind of fumbling around trying to find my checkbook, trying to find all my stuff, and I hear her say, "Were you good?" Thinking, was I good? There's an interesting question. And I kind of go, well, yeah, I was good. And she looks up and she kind of giggles and she looks behind me. And I look behind me and there's a gentleman holding a little boy. And the little boy has on these really thick Coke bottle glasses. And I look at him and I say, "What's your name?" He said, "My name is Stephen." And he and I start talking. Kids are just one of my favorite things in the world. And so Stephen and I start talking a little bit. Well, Stephen's trying to wiggle out of his dad's arms. And I look, and next to the checkout, there is a huge plastic Labrador retriever. Huge and plastic. And it has a slit in the top of its head so that you can make donations for seeing eye dogs. It's the container that collects the donations. Well, Stephen wants to get by the plastic dog. And so I'm talking to Stephen and I say, "Well, Stephen," and I look him in the face and I say, "Do you have a dog?" And he looks at me and he goes, "Not yet." That's hope. That is a belief that the future will be better than today. That's hope. That's what hope is all about. It's believing that tomorrow holds something more than today. Now, something interesting about human beings. Well, that's a little bit of a problem, but I have to get over here and see y'all too. I haven't seen you yet. We as human beings are the only people that think about the future the way that we do. Other animals, my dog does not get up in the morning worrying about what he's going to wear. It has never crossed his mind or been a problem. He is not worrying about where he's going on vacation. He's not worrying about his health. He's not worrying about anything that's going to happen in the future. We are the only animals that do that. So when we do that, it can lead to a couple things. And I'm going to push this. Okay, I'm going to push it. It can lead to disappointment. I don't know how that T got down there by itself. Remember I told you that I'm not real left brain? Well, when I left home, I could have sworn that T was up at the end of that word disappointment. But somehow the T has moved. So thinking about disappointment, thinking about the future can lead to disappointment, or it can lead to stress. I've heard fear described as future events appearing real. Future events appearing real. Because sometimes we spend a lot of time worrying about what might happen. And that is especially true of all of us. And I think it's typical human nature to worry about after we receive a life-challenging diagnosis of what is my life going to be like. We start moving into what's the future going to look like. And that can cause us a lot of stress. The truth is, life is a terminal illness for everyone. For everyone, we just happen to have it brought in front of our faces a little bit closer so that we think about it. The good news is that thinking about the future can also lead to happiness. Happiness. If our expectations for the future, I'm going to step in front of this one so I can see the people on this side. If our expectations for the future line up with what really happens, we're very happy. We're happy. If you think about the future and you think about, okay, let's say I'll give you a great example. Monday's my daughter's 25th birthday. My 25, soon to be 25-year-old. Carolyn always has very, very, very high expectations. So, what happens to Carolyn? Sometimes those expectations don't come to be. So when they don't happen, she's very unhappy. She's very unhappy because it didn't pan out to her expectations. Now, if she holds expectations that are more realistic, when they happen, she will be happier. That's what causes, I don't know if that's the right word, but that's what helps us to be happy. So for all of us, the expectation that life may be the same after a diagnosis may be unrealistic. But the expectation that life after diagnosis can still be meaningful, joyful, and fulfilling is very realistic. It's how we position that and how we begin to look at it. So when we think of hope, we think of a general feeling that some desire will be fulfilled. Each of you have to determine what that desire will be. In order for it to be hopeful, you have to believe that tomorrow's better than today, that your life will still hold meaning. Okay, this is my wedding. I want you to go back in time to April 30th, 1977. That's the day I got married. And it was the happiest day of my life. That's my husband that I'm kissing, yes. He'll be happy to see the excites easily when I get home. We're still married 31 years later. But this was the day I got married, and it was beautiful. Oh, it was beautiful. April in Florida is not so hot. It's beautiful. The sun's streaming through the window. I have the veil over my face. My dad's walking me down the aisle. Fairy book wedding. And I'm expecting a fairy tale life to follow. Don't we all? I was 22. So I'm thinking, oh, this is just wonderful. Life doesn't get any better than this. Well, fast forward a couple years to July 1980. July 1980, my husband and I are sitting in a doctor's office. After a 3-year search for a reason for my tiredness, my low white blood count, and all of the joint pain, we're sitting there hoping that this doctor will have the answer. And I'm kind of sitting up on, the crinkly white paper on the exam table, and my husband's sitting down below me in a chair, and we're very quiet. And we're kind of reading the diplomas on the wall. I'm sure many of you have gone through this. And the doctor walks in, and he looks at me, and he looks at my husband. He's 25 years old. And he said, I have some really bad news. Cindy, you have systemic lupus erythematosus. It can be fatal. It can affect your kidneys. It can affect any parts of your body. And most likely you won't be able to have children. I was devastated. Devastated. And I held back the tears as I left his office. And I got in the elevator with my husband, and tears started streaming down my face. And I kind of held it together, you know, that feeling when the tears are streaming and you're trying to hold it in for everybody in that elevator. And we walk across the parking lot to the car, and I get in the car and I start sobbing uncontrollably, sobbing. And my husband puts his big arms around me. He's a big guy. And he puts his arms around me and he hugs me to kind of put my face up against him. And I still remember, he wears really stiffly starched shirts. So I remember the shirt being a little stiff and scratchy. To this day when I hug him, it's still a little stiff and scratchy. But he put his arms around me and he said to me in that moment, "Cindy, things will be okay. We will get through this." And in that moment, I chose to believe him. I chose to believe him. And the sobbing settled down. It wasn't great, but it was better. And my personal belief for my life from that point forward was that things will be okay. I can't always define okay for you. And I have to tell you that okay doesn't always mean easy. Life still has its challenges for everyone, whether they're diagnosed with a chronic illness or not. But for me, my little mantra, and I had an artist do a little drawing for her, and I wear her on a t-shirt that I've had made to remind myself that no matter how hard it gets, things will be okay. Now, this is the part of the presentation where I was going to have you pick up the little card that I put on your seat, and don't bother looking around. Let me just tell you, don't bother looking around for those little cards, because the post office still has them somewhere between here and Tampa. They also have the magnets that I was bringing as a gift for every single one of you, and the books that I was doing a book signing on at 3. So instead of, if they get here today, the post service, I'm holding the belief that they will get here today between 11 and 1. And so if after I'm gone you find a little magnet on your seat, that's from me. And if you come to the book signing, here's what I was going to do this anyway, because I was signing journals, and whether I sell journals or not is irrelevant to me. It's always about the people. You know, my husband, much to his chagrin, I'm always about the people, not the money. And so I had a little sign that said free hugs anyway. So just come get a free hug and talk to me at 3:30. If we have books, great. If we don't, no problem. We'll just do it without. But what was important to me at this point is that you think about your words. What are the words that you cling to offer you hope when things get really tough? For some people, it's a Bible verse. There may be a Bible verse that you repeat to yourself. It may be a quote that you've heard. It may be anything. It can be anything. But what I encourage you to do at some point in the future, when you have a piece of paper and a pen, that you think about what are your words of hope. What are your words? What are the words that get you through when things are very tough? Okay, remember I was going to talk about hope and optimism. Well, are there any two better examples of optimism and pessimism than Tigger, who says Tiggers can do anything, and Eeyore, whose favorite quote is, "Oh, bother." So when we think about optimism, optimism can be learned, and it can be improved upon, and it can make our lives a whole lot more pleasant. It is much more pleasant living a life as an optimist than it is living a life as a pessimist. If you're always thinking that tomorrow something awful might happen, a lot of times it does. Now, awful things happen, and I am by nature, as someone heard earlier, perky, not my favorite, perky, but optimistic. I think my books are going to get here by 11 today. Who knows where they are? The things may be in Japan at this point. But I'm still optimistic that they will be here before 3 o'clock today. So when we talk about optimism, the good news is that we as Americans are typically optimistic. We are typically optimistic, and all ages believe that the future will be an improvement on the present. So it's how do we hold on to that belief? Well, one thing that's been proven is that people who are optimistic, people who have a positive explanatory style, I say that's the Tigger point of view, a positive explanatory style have greater health. They have greater health. So it's very important that we learn to have a positive explanatory style, to explain things in a positive way. Have you ever heard the fake it till you make it? Well, I've heard that if you smile, your brain didn't know whether you're really happy or not. So keep smiling till your brain catches on that maybe you are happy. So we keep looking at things in a positive way until somehow they happen, or, you know, they don't. We do something else. We live with plan B, and hopefully all of you have learned to live with plan B. Let me tell you what this means. What it means is that you believe that positive events happen because of you, that they are not random acts. For example, if you were to get a promotion, instead of saying, gosh, wasn't I lucky? Oops. Oh, shoot. We may need a little help here now. How did I do that? We'll get to there in a minute. Instead of saying, gosh, I was lucky to get that promotion, you're going to say, I deserve that promotion. I got that promotion because I worked hard, because I had a skill set that people needed, and I own it. I own the positive things that happen in my life. How many people in here are support group leaders? Yeah, there are a lot. And I hear support group leaders so often say, you know, my group is really wonderful and they're doing really great things and I'm so proud of them. The reason those things are happening is because of the work that you're doing. You're helping people to find what they need. So own that and be proud. Okay, now we may have to take a, let's see, let me go back up here for just a second. Remember, flexibility was one of those things? Well, one of my favorite quotes that I live by is, blessed are the flexible, for they shall never be bent out of shape. And it serves me well, you can see why. Okay. You also believe that more positive things will happen in the future. And, see, you gotta believe. I'm standing up here believing that it's gonna work. And the other key to that, at least I can move this where I can see you, is that negative events are not your fault. They are not your fault. Something did not happen because of you. So often we claim a negative event and say it's all my fault. I've heard people say that if you had done such and such, you wouldn't have lupus, Cindy. My mom believed for a long time that if I ate more mashed potatoes, that I wouldn't have lupus. Now, don't all the scientists that are researching it wish they knew that? Spent millions and millions of dollars going to waste when all I needed to do was eat more mashed potatoes. So anyway, let's talk about self-talk. Let's talk about positive self-talk, because this is something you can learn as well. What's going on in your head? How many of you have seen the book or have seen Randy Krauss and his wife talk about The Last Lecture? The book, The Last Lecture. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And it's about a man who's dying from cancer, and it's died from cancer. Recently died, you're right, I just heard that. Recently died from cancer. But he gave a last lecture at Carnegie Mellon about his experience. And the speech is wonderful, wonderful. And it's become a book, and they were interviewed on 2020, I believe it was. And one of the things that I found so interesting wasn't necessarily what Randy was saying, but I was very interested in how his wife was dealing with this, because they have very young children. And I think it was Diane Sawyer doing the interview, and she said to her, her name is Jay, and she said, Jay, how are you living with this? He said, well, what I found is that it really matters what I say to myself. And anytime I start going down the path of what the future might look like, I tell myself, not helpful. Not helpful. So as your mind starts running with what the future might look like, it's helpful to have some words that bring you back to the present instead of venturing off to the future. I want to show you, I recently, and you see the words find the beauty. I have a just turned 22-year-old daughter who's in the Peace Corps. And she left last September for Morocco, and she will spend 27 months in Morocco. And it's bittersweet, just to kind of get that part away. It's bittersweet. I couldn't be any more proud of her, and I couldn't miss her more. So she called on her birthday. She had a very, 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 very sad Christmas. She was there by herself. And she called on her birthday, and I had told her all along, sweetheart, I want to come visit you. I have frequent flyer points, and I want to use them, and I want to come visit you. And so she called on her birthday, February 17th, and she said, come now. Come now. I was like, well, it's a little more difficult than come now. The good news is I have a passport. The bad news is I needed a lot of vaccinations to be able to go live in a little village in Morocco with her for a week. So, and you'll love this. This is an aside too. I called my doctor, and I said to my doctor, okay, I'm not calling for permission to go to Morocco. So let's get that off the table. I'm calling to ask how I should get my vaccinations. And we worked it out, and the truth, I could do everything but live. I'm not vaccinated against yellow fever. If anyone in here has yellow fever, please do not get near me, because yellow fever is a live vaccine. So I could not be vaccinated against yellow fever. Well, as my trip started getting closer, and I got the tickets, and I went in April, she started sharing tidbits about her life in Morocco. The first tidbit was that, Mom, you have a son. I go, I have a son? She goes, well, there's one of the guys in the Peace Corps, he comes and he stays with me sometimes when he comes, because we don't have any money, so he sleeps on the floor, but I tell everybody he's my brother. So would you kind of go along with Chris being your son? I'm like, okay, I can live with that one. That one's okay, and because that's what they do. They travel around because they have very little money. They give them very, very, very little money. 2,100 dirham, which is $300 a month. Includes her tutor, her apartment, her everything. Complete living. So then she shares with me, the next thing she shares with me is that she doesn't have a refrigerator. Well, as we get within a week of my coming, she starts promising to have something for me to sleep on when I get there. I'm thinking, this is not looking good. This is not looking good. So I say to myself, I need some words to kind of keep myself together. Because the truth is, I would have flown 20 hours for a hug. I love my daughter, I miss her, I would have done that. But I could see that this trip was going to be a little more difficult than previously thought. So I decide that my words will be, find the beauty. That no matter where I go, no matter what we do, I'm going to find the beauty in the culture, in the people, in my experience with her. And I first landed, number one, I found beauty. I found exactly what I was looking for. I also found some things that would be hard to classify as beautiful. Like the first time I excused myself from the table, went upstairs to use the restroom, and found a squat toilet. I had not ever seen a squat toilet before. For those of you, I did not take a picture. People always ask me why not. Did not think that was something that I would have a label over that said find the beauty. But it's kind of a porcelain little thing. You squat over, has a hole in it, and then there's a little bucket and a little thing where you turn on water. So I figured, okay, you must fill the bucket, go to the bathroom, dump the water in. Well, I go back downstairs and I go, well, Jules, you could have shared that. She goes, I meant to tell you to put toilet paper in your purse. That was not my concern, sweetheart. That was the least of my concerns. And then she asked, what'd you do? And I told her, she goes, okay, you got it right. So we go back to her apartment where I'm going to be spending a week. She has 2 squat toilets. Didn't want to share that part with her 52-year-old mother. So I think she was afraid I wouldn't come at that point, and she really wanted to see me. So I held on to my belief to find the beauty. This is the side of her apartment building, and this is trash. This is what they do with trash in Morocco. You pile it next to your building, and every so often, when the landlord feels like it, he burns it. So I'm finding my beauty. Find your beauty, Cindy. I'm finding my beauty. And I've always been into health issues. And unfortunately, I saw children going through this garbage. I saw dead rats in this garbage and was horrified, but still found the beauty in being with my daughter. So we have to hold on to that. There was astounding beauty in the country. The king had, you gotta be kidding me. Okay, the king had built a mosque for $800 million to honor himself. So this was the beauty that I did find in contrast to the poverty. And it's just like our lives when you think about it. There are days of great beauty, and then there are days that we feel empty. But we have to hold on to that hope. This is her class. That's what she does over there. Just as an aside, she teaches English, and this is her class, and it was wonderful. I got to go with her to class, and they would all walk up and hug me and go, "Your mama? Your mama?" And then one of them took me home, so I got to go and visit their home. So there are different ways to, if we don't by nature have positive self-talk, to improve on that. One of those is to write in a journal. And I'm actually a journaling instructor because they're great ways to express emotions on paper. But I encourage you sometime to just write about your day. Just write about your day in a journal. And then go back and look at it. Is it a Tigger entry or is it an Eeyore entry? And it's okay to share the negative, but just go through and look at it. And sometimes it's helpful to change negative self-talk to questions. I can't handle this when you're standing there and someone says something to you and you're thinking to yourself, I can't handle this. I can't take any more. See if you can change that to a question. See if you can say to yourself, how can I handle this? That tiny shift can make a world of difference. And the last is to replace negative statements with milder wording. Hate may become dislike, because that's a step towards moving to a more positive explanatory style, which leads to better what? Health. Leads to better health. Okay, I want to talk about care and support. And I want to start, walk down here, because I left something down here. Number one, I left my notes, which seem to be totally irrelevant at this point. We'll just worry about those later. I was reading your magazine, The Scleroderma Voice. I was reading it, and I receive it because I've spoken here before, so I receive it, and I get to see all your really cool stories. And when I looked through it, and I started thinking about support, first of all, I noticed it's the first word in your mission statement. Now, is that typical? Where did these come from? I don't know. Those are probably my markers so I could find my page. But support is the first word in your mission statement here at the Scleroderma Foundation. And that's not to be taken lightly. And as I looked through your magazine, I found such wonderful, wonderful, wonderful examples of support. I found a story about a gentleman named Ron Geddes. Does he happen to be here? Okay, here's what he said after receiving a double lung transplant. A solid support system has been very important to Ron. I have a great group of friends who belong to the fire department that I visit with almost every night. They're the people I fish with and the people who help me deal with scleroderma. I can laugh with them and make jokes with them. They're the same people I cry with. That's what we're talking about with support. You have another story about Lindsay Grogan. Is Lindsay? Okay. Lindsay attends the University of Georgia and had the lower portion of her leg removed. And she says, growing up in Macon, Georgia, I loved it because she's from the South like me. She probably even talks like me. I was going to have her come forward. Growing up in Macon, Georgia, Lindsay was fortunate enough to be surrounded by family, friends, and a community that accepted and supported her throughout her youngest years. Now, there's something to be said about care and support. How many of you in this room are here with someone who has scleroderma? You're a friend, you're a spouse. Look around. Because I want to tell you, you're the luckiest people in the world. The person that you're here for is the luckiest person in the world. Because there is nothing that helps us more than a caring and supportive environment. And I want to share with you a story. And it's a story about my mom. And my mom has a really hard time with me having lupus. A really, really difficult time. It's very hard for her for lots and lots and lots of reasons. And one day, my lupus was really bad. They had given me Cytoxan IV, which is a very strong chemotherapy drug, put me in menopause at 37, and I had been up all night throwing up. I was in bed, laying with my head in the pillow, dark room, and my mom comes busting into the room. She throws open the blinds, and she hands me a gift. So I kind of sat up, and I unwrapped the gift, and it was this bracelet. I have it on today. It was this bracelet. Now, I have to tell you, in that moment, the last thing I needed was a bracelet. Didn't need a bracelet in that moment. But you know what? That was my mom's way of showing me she loved me and she cared. And what I want to say to each and every one of you is that the people closest to you may not always give you exactly what you need, but they love you the best way they know how. My mom's way of showing love is by giving gifts. That's how she shows me that she loves me. Now, when I'm feeling good, I love that style. Who doesn't love that? But when I'm feeling bad, I have to turn to the gentle demeanor of my best friend, my sister-in-law, and my daughters. So I encourage you as patients. First of all, I applaud you, the friends and family that are in this room. And from the bottom of my heart, go. Absolutely, absolutely. Because you mean more to us than anything in the world. You mean more to us and more than we can ever express to you in words. So know that as well. Patience, those of you with scleroderma, don't be afraid to ask for what you need. Sometimes people don't know. You're going to find this hard to believe, but men and women don't think the same. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever just glimpsed that thought? My husband, who I adore, you saw, who I absolutely adore, when I get sick, the first thing he does, and he doesn't mean to do this, he gets angry. He's mad that it's back. I remember laying in bed one day with a horrible, horrible, horrible headache, unable to get out of bed, unable to do anything. And I remember him standing at the end of the bed going, "Cindy, this is really not a good day for this." And I thought, well, no kidding. No kidding. It isn't really a great day for me either. So sometimes we have to tell people what we need. They want to help. So often they just don't know what to do. So help them figure that out. And create a caring and supportive environment for yourself. Surround yourself with people that love you in the way you want to be loved. By things that nurture your spirit. What do you like to look at? What colors do you like? What books? I have a little box next to my bed, and all that it's there for is it has books and movies and comics and crayons. My 9-year-old loves coming to my house. I'm her only aunt with this coloring book and box next to her bed. Those are my things to do when I don't feel good. I keep them in that box for just that reason. They're books I want to read that I don't take the time to read otherwise, so that I can find ways to nurture myself. Add things that make you laugh. Find humor in the situations. And most of all, surround yourself with things that make you happy. Things that make you happy. Life's too short to surround ourselves with things we don't like. If you don't like it, get rid of it. Hopefully that's not your caregiver that's here with you. I'm sure it isn't. I'm sure it isn't. So as we go back, and as we think about all of these transitions that we move through in our lives, each of us will move through this process many, many times. And I was talking to a friend the other day who has a paralyzed diaphragm, and she's on oxygen. And I was talking to her about coming and about what I was talking about, and she and I have done prevention stuff for a long time. She said, Cindy, you know the other secret to the new normal? She goes, it's learning not to compare it to the old normal. Learning not to compare it to the old normal. My life is very different than it was prior to lupus. People always say lupus is a gift. You know, your illness is a gift. How many of you have heard that? Your lupus is a gift, or your scleroderma is a gift. Well, it's one I would return the day after Christmas, given the option. I'd be in the return line with this one. But I think what they mean by that is that I would never have gotten to know all of you. I would never have gotten to know all of you were it not for the lupus, because the ACR conference connected with Franny, I wouldn't have been there. I wouldn't have been there. So it is finding the beauty in our new normal. And as I mentioned earlier, none of us, no one in this room knows exactly how long they'll live. No one. And I think we can all take a lesson from the butterfly that says the butterfly counts not months, but moments, and has time enough. So in closing, my wish for each of you is that you may live your life with intention, walk to the edge, practice wellness, play with abandon, live with no regret, appreciate your friends, do what you love every day, do what you love, and live as if this is all there is. I love you.